Good evening and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Front Page for the spring 2019 semester here at KU Community College. We are back from spring break. This is a show that is broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. On this show, we have focused on many occasions about the historic sites in the city of Auburn, but Cayuga County has a range of historic tourism locales that we wanted to expand on, and we're doing it by kicking off a discussion about the ERIE Canal Heritage Park in Port Barn, which in 2016 opened up after a $10 million state investment project. With access to the thruway, travelers to the site can go to the site located where the former Lock 52 of the old ERIE Canal is. In our studio today is Mary Riley, the park manager of the old ERIE Canal Heritage Park, to discuss the park. Welcome to Be on the Front Page. And I say that, we're delighted to hear, I say that because sometimes people get different parts of this. So for those who don't know, what is the Port Barn Old ERIE Canal Heritage Park?
Port Byron Old ERIE Canal Heritage Park is an 18-acre park that is available for people to pull off the thruway or off Route 31 and come see the and explore the history of the canal eras. That we actually had 3 different canal systems in New York State, and 2 of the 3 are evident at the park.
So what are the 2 that are at the park?
The original ERIE Canal, what the people call Clinton's Ditch, came through that area, and actually if you stand in the Visitors Center, you're actually in the original canal bed. And then we have the enlarged canal that came through as well onto the park.
So there were several phases where the canal that we're celebrating now, is this the 201st anniversary or to a second? I know there's been a number of films and a lot of stories about the canal, but it was also expanded with time, and that occurred there. Where's the third one?
The third one is the current barge canal. What we call the barge canal, which is actually north of the park. So you're located in Port Barn. When did you officially open? I know you're not open right now. We're closely getting there. Weather's turning. When did you open originally? The fall of 2016. We opened up, and then our first full season was 2017. So this will be our 3rd full season that we will be open for visitors.
And how are you funded?
We are funded, well, it's a partnership between the Thruway Authority, New York State Thruway Authority, and the Canal Society of New York State. It's a unique partnership. There's only one other park in New York State that is a partnership where you can get off the thruway without paying a toll and see a site, a historic site, and then get back on the thruway.
Where is that?
The other one is near the Albany area, and that's a smaller park, and it's on the Mohawk River part of the barge canal.
Oh, so it's a canal-related one as well.
Yes.
Some may, the Canal Society was in the news many years ago because they've been trying to do this for many years, and they bought the property in 94?
94,
So it took 22 years by the time this all started or got to a point. For those who don't know, what is the Canal Society?
Canal Society of New York State is a nonprofit organization that promotes, preserves, and researches canal history, and helps fund programs to save artifacts for on the canal history.
So is it a not-for-profit?
It's a non-profit organization,
And where's it based?
Well, we're all across New York State, but our base really is right now the park.
Oh, it is the park,
But we have members throughout New York State and other states.
So do they own the property, or does the Thruway Authority own the property?
It's a partnership. So part of the property is owned by the Thruway Authority, and part of the property is owned by the Canal Society of New York State.
And how long have you been park manager?
I started last season in July of last season.
So what are your responsibilities?
I oversee the park help with the projects, help with staffing, help with maintenance issues, do a lot of meeting with people, the public.
So in essence, you are the director that is responsible. You might have a different title.
I'm a manager,
but you're the manager.
Yeah.
So how many employees do you have?
We have both paid staff and volunteers.
Okay.
And actually, we are going to be having an open house at the end of April, on the 23rd of April, for anyone that's interested in being either a paid staff member or a volunteer. And it will be at our visitor center. So.
And so paid staff, how large is that?
It's a real part-time.
Okay.
But the paid staff member is actually called a travel counselor.
Which is a great title. I was going to ask you, what did that was in one, you sent me some information. So what is a travel counselor and what do they do?
Travel counselors actually greet the people that come into the visitor center. The visitor center is the first building that visitors come into. They either pull off the thruway into that parking lot or off of Route 31, and they enter through the visitor center. The travel counselors are there to greet all the visitors and explain to the visitors the displays that are in that building and the different eras of the canal systems, because a lot of people don't understand that there really were 3 different eras of the canal. So it's through maps and displays they explain.
So are these permanent exhibitions, or do you change exhibits every now and then?
Some of the things are permanent. We have a lock display that was actually in the Chicago World's Fair.
I thought that was very cool. So you have a lock boat model.
No, it's a lock display.
It's a lock display. Okay. So what does that mean?
It is a replica of what we have there for the enlarged Erie Canal remains that are in the park. It's not exact, but it was in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, and it has been restored by a Canal Society member and is on permanent display at the park.
So how did you all get it?
The story is someone found it in a garage under a tarp in pieces. And
usually the case.
And Rob Mangold took it and restored it, and then through the Canal Society of New York State, he brought it to the park as part of our permanent displays. We also have hanging maps, and we have a display case that we're going to be changing different items in. We have
so you have a collection that
we have a huge collection of items that through different members of the Canal Society of New York State. The Canal Society of New York State was formed in 1953, and we've been given items since then from all the different members, so we have a large collection, and so we can change out different things in that case. Last year in September and October, we had Canal China ware that was depictions of different locations during the DeWitt Clinton's era. There's a couple plates and things that had DeWitt
the 18
Clinton
teens and 20s.
Yes, and the original Erie Canal. Yeah.
So we've all heard the song. I'm not going to ask you to sing it. And I was surprised. I think I was watching David Muir's narration of a PBS piece. It was not exactly done. It was not the Erie Canal song. Yes. So low bridge, everybody down.
Yes.
So for a bit of history, the canal was built when?
The original Erie Canal, the Clinton's Ditch, was
which was not exactly a complimentary term in that particular.
No.
But one of the largest infrastructure projects that the new country had ever undertaken.
Yes. It opened up the country for reasonable travel across the country. So it changed the economy, and it changed how people moved in New York State and also through other states. There was expansions in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, and even farther beyond because of the Erie Canal.
So in New York, how many locks were there originally? I thought you said Red 72.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Well,
so lock 52
Lock 52 is actually the enlarged canal.
Okay.
Lock. Okay. So that was on the enlarged.
And when were those enlargements done?
Okay, so the original canal was completed in 1825, and then soon after it was completed, the state realized that it was too small because it was 4 feet by 40 feet, and there wasn't enough draft. So they started very soon after the completion planning for the enlargement. The enlargement in some areas were in the same place. They just made it 7 feet by 70 feet wide. In other areas like Port Byron, they actually moved the canal and created new locks and new canal beds.
But you have, but where your park is, you have 2.
Well, actually in our park we have a very unique area where the original canal actually crossed into the enlarged canal bed.
Okay.
And the original area where it touched the enlarged canal bed, part of that actually became a dry dock for the enlarged canal. So that Tanner's dry dock was moved from farther in the village to where off of the enlarged canal by using part of the original canal bed, and that is right in our park, at our park property.
So I met you originally through Leadership Hugo. I don't know if you were in the best class ever, but that's a different story. We'll have Leadership Hugo. Jessica Wrench will be here in a couple of weeks to talk about Leadership Hugo. But part of that was about Cayuga County.
Yes.
How important was the lock in Port Byron to the growth of Cayuga County?
It was very important. There, in the original, on the original canal, Clinton's Ditch, there was one of the largest, well, it was the second largest, they say, flour mill on the canal. And when the canal was moved, much of the businesses in Port Byron failed because a lot of their businesses were dependent on the canal. And so there was a 5-year dispute on whether to just enlarge the canal where it was or to move it. And so many businesses failed or had to figure out ways to move to continue to use the canal. And one of the companies that did not end up moving was Beach's Mill. But it was at one time the second largest flour mill in New York State. So
let's walk through a little bit about this. There are multiple paths that you can take. So you come into the visitor center, you can look at the displays, and then there are other pieces that are either restored or preserved or may be at a future date. So let's kind of
so you either go in either one of the parking lots and you walk into the visitor center. You'll see the displays and the maps. The gift shop is also right there in that building. Then you will walk out into the park, and there's a path that goes across a bridge, and at that point you have a choice of 4 paths you can take. The first path
one is what?
Goes up to the top of a slight incline, and that is the top of the lock. That is the reason why there was a lock there. Originally there had been a store called Kern's Store. It was a dry goods store on the lock, and there's nothing left of that, but we do want to eventually credit the Kearns family.
Would you rebuild the store there?
I don't know if we'd rebuild it or put like a mural or some kind of signage there.
So what's located? Is it just a green space right now?
It's just an area where you can overlook the canal bed of the enlarged canal and overlook the lock remains. It was right on the lock.
So that's path 1.
That's path 1. Path 2 and 3, you walk actually into the canal beds. Now they've been filled in to keep them stable, but you can walk through and imagine the boats going through. You can also walk to the other end of the canal locks and look down the canal bed. And the canal bed is now considered a
they're wetlands.
The wetlands, okay, right. And so eventually we would like to work with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Thruway Authority and have some type of path to go in there and restore the lock walls so that people can actually go in, and then possibly eventually down the road have a model, an actual two-size model of a canal boat that would be part of our display in the canal bed.
And Path 4 is what?
Path 4 takes you up to the ERIE house, the mule barn, and the blacksmith shop, and shanty, the lock tender shanty.
Right, so let's take pieces at a time.
Yep.
So what's the New Berlin shanty?
The New Berlin shanty is a new building that was just put on our property in March. It was a in Newark, and it was going to be destroyed because the owners wanted it off their property, and it was we believe a lock tender shanty for both the original and the enlarged canal, and had been moved at least 3, if not 4 times before it was finally.
And now you're moving it back.
We're moving. It was never in our location,
okay.
But it was in the Newark area.
How big a building is it?
It's a 10 by 12 foot building. It's very small, and
can visitors
it's just
go inside it?
When it gets restored, yes.
Okay.
Inside, we still have the drop desk and an area where you can see where the potbelly stove was, and we would like to restore it. Right now, it has holes in the roof, and I mean, it hasn't been used for many years, and it's covered by a tarp. But
and so what is the old ERIE house? Or the ERIE, I'm not Old ERIE. Old ERIE is the restaurant. What is the ERIE house?
ERIE House was a tavern that was built by Peter and Salvatore Vandetto, and they were from Rochester. And the story is they were walking along the Erie Canal, the enlarged Erie Canal, and they were up at the top end and looking at all the boats that were waiting to go through the lock to go on to Rochester. And there was this huge piece of land right there, and Peter turned to his brother and said, this would be a great place for a tavern.
So it was an operating tavern until when?
No, he bought the property and built the building and ran it as a tavern until the village of Port Byron became dry in 1907, and then moved his tavern to Montezuma. But his family, his wife, and his 2 daughters continued to stay at the ERIE house.
So the village became, and the town became dry, and he just moved his business.
Yeah.
Is that building open to the public?
It is our museum.
Okay,
right
that's
now.
the museum.
Yes.
And so what do you see in there?
Okay, right now we have a replica of the bar. There were parts of the bar in the basement, and Bartolotta cabinetry, I think they call it, came and they took the parts of the bar and recreated the bar and the back of the bar. And so that's down in the original part of the tavern. And then upstairs we have some displays, and you can overlook where the dry dock was and the canal bed. There's a display describing what the dry dock was, the Tanner's Dry Dock, and there is a display that's being put together by the BOCES Media Arts Department, describing all the different transportation that went through Port Byron at the different times, and it's going to be a 5-panel map display.
So new to that area, also you're going to have a blacksmith?
We have a blacksmith that comes in. Usually it's the 3rd Saturday of every month, but in May he will be there the 2nd Saturday. And he sets up his stuff, and his friends come in and they have portable forges, and he will also have some students there this year, and he will be explaining to the visitors what is being made by the blacksmiths, and then the things will be made right there.
So are they so I've been to the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown. They're in period dress. Is that the same thing? This is just how a blacksmith would, this is an educational piece.
Right.
Not saying that is not, but it's not a period piece.
No.
Okay.
No.
And so is there anything else up in that area before we move on to some?
Well, we have the mule barn, which actually still has the stalls. There are 3 stalls in the mule barn. But no mules. No mules. Okay. When we first took over the property, there was actually still tack and straw in the mule barn. We still have the tack. We got rid of the straw.
Okay. Well, the mice would get rid of it at the time.
Both the mule barn and the blacksmith shop were in pretty bad shape when we took over the property, and the Erie House as well had been hit pretty hard.
So that's now something you can visit as well.
It is. They've all been restored, so you can go in and look at them.
So if you're going there, first of all, is there a cost to go?
No.
Okay.
So
it's free to the public.
Yeah.
We keep saying you can come because you're not open right now because we're still in winter. If you look outside, we're in winter. When do you open up?
We open up May 1st, and we're open until October 31st.
And you're open every day of the week?
Every day of the week from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening.
And so for people who are, if you're coming on the thruway, how do you get there?
Okay, you go on the westbound, eastbound side only right now, and you pull in it's between exits 41 and exits 40.
Okay, so. And you pull in, there's no toll to get in?
No.
Okay.
No.
And if you're coming in from the other side, how do you get in there?
Okay, so in the village of Port Byron, you're going to be on Route 31, and it's just outside, on the west side of the village, just outside the village. That parking lot's a little bit more difficult to find, but if you look just as you come out of the village and look to your right, you will see a visitor center building, and you pull into that parking lot. We hope to have better signage this year. It's one of the things that we've been working on is
when you do that, you cannot cross from non-throughway to throughway, correct?
No, there's 2 different parking lots with a fence in between.
And while you have bathrooms there, and you have some vending machines, it is not a rest stop in the normal sense that you can get food or anything like that.
It is not a rest stop, but we do have picnic tables, and so people can bring in and take out. We do have trash cans and stuff that they can bring in lunch or snacks.
How long is the average stay? Do you have any idea?
Some people stay really quick. They just come in, see what we have in the visitor center, use the bathrooms, and leave. Some people are there an hour, hour and a half. Some people get lost in the Erie House and have all sorts of questions.
So would one of your travel counselors, will they walk the whole way with people, or what do they do?
No, the travel counselors stay in the visitor center, but we have volunteer docents that are at the Erie House. Sometimes they'll be out at the outside in the mule barn or the blacksmith shop. And if we have enough volunteers on a particular day, you might even meet someone in the locked remains. So
say that again.
The lock remains.
Okay.
The enlarged.
Somebody would be down there.
Do
you get a lot of school tours?
We do have school tours. We have all different kinds of tours. We have historical societies come in. We have schools. We also have homeschool groups that will come in.
I think I read somewhere where you have 16,000 people come through.
Last year we had 16,000.
That's great.
The year before we had a little bit more because it was our real first opening year, and we hope to have more this year. And
where do you get your funding from? Is it solely the Canal Society?
The Canal Society of New York State and the Thruway Authority work together. So there are certain things that are paid for by the Canal Society and certain things that are paid for by the Thruway Authority. And then for projects and like displays and stuff, we will apply for grants.
But the $10 million visitor center was paid for by taxpayers, correct?
Yes.
And that construction started there when?
Well, the planning started 20 years, but it started, the building started in 2014.
And it took about 2 years to that. I know in the news, and I invited you on before this became the news, but there is this issue about the towns and some Red Sea money. First of all, do you get any money from Cuyahoga County or any of the towns and villages to the? Okay, so they were talking about rewatering.
Yes.
That's what I want to ask you about.
Okay.
What is rewatering? Because it doesn't sound doesn't make sense to me the way I'm thinking of it.
Okay, so the rewatering is not in our park.
Okay.
It would flood the thruway if it was in our park.
Okay.
So, but there is an area between Weedsport and Port Byron, the Aqueduct Park in Weedsport and Shazel Park in Port Byron, that for many years people have talked about rewatering and making it available for kayaks and canoes.
So there was a Brutus, Mentz, Port Byron deal. That looks like it's partially fallen through unless the county comes in.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with you all.
It has really nothing to do with us. But
it's just odd it came up while we were trying to set up this show.
Yes.
You're a dog-friendly park?
We are a dog-friendly park. We have water bowls and treats in both the Visitor Center and the Erie House. So
tell me about Peter Vendetto, and who is Maud?
Maud was Peter's dog, and there are many photographs that we have of Maud, and we are using Maud as part of our advertising and different things that we do in the park to really stress that we are dog friendly. And so you may see different advertisements with Maud the dog or different things going on. We have signs within the park that shows people where to go, and Maud is on the sign. Or
when did Maud live there?
When it was a tavern.
Okay, so what are some of the future projects you have? What's your next goal? What's your next hope for the park?
Well, right now we do want to restore the shanty, and then hopefully put it on the canal wall where the original lock tender shanty was. A lock tender shanty during the canal era was a place where the lock tender would stay in inclement weather, or when there weren't boats going through, and they had a desk and a chair and a little potbelly stove. And it's a very small building, and there was one on the lock wall between the two lock chambers. And if we can get this shanty to be more stable and restored, our hopes and dreams are to get that back up on to the lock wall to show where the original shanty was.
And then you want to do something with the wetlands?
And we do want to work with the Thruway Authority and the Corps of Engineers, and hopefully be able to put in a walkway or some other a display, like a boat or something, inside the canal wall.
So you see these all as being partnerships between the Canal Society and the state of New York through the Thruway as well.
Yeah.
So finally, if there was one thing you want people to take away when they come to the Heritage Park, what is it?
An understanding of the canal systems and how important the canal systems are and were to New York State's history, and just to be able to feel proud of how our state formed not just our state through the canals, but formed the country. It is an adventure of history to go through the park and learn about what was in the past and then what the future can be.
Well, thank you. We want to thank Mary Riley, the park manager for the Old Erie Canal Heritage Park. We hope you'll come back on to give us updates as they go along. Like we said, it is not all about Auburn. Yes. There are other historic sites that we have in Cuyahoga County. We want to thank you for giving us the last half hour of your time.
Thank you.
We'll be back a little bit more about tourism next week. We'll have Cuyahoga County's new tourism director, Karen Coolin, as well as the Cuyahoga Museum's new executive director, Kristen Wise. Dana Bolter, who ran for Congress last year, will be on to talk about her new project, the Public Square. We also hope to bring you in the coming weeks Senators Robert Antonacci and Pamela Helming, now that the New York State budget is done, as well as John Katko, the congressman for the area. Our final shows will be with Jeff Parazola and Auburn School District Business Manager Lisa Green, talking about the Auburn school budget that is being proposed, and now with the school now getting their final budget runs, they'll know how much money they have. Then we'll finish off with City Manager Jeff Dygert and City Comptroller Rachel Jacobs on the city's 2019-2020 budget proposal that will need to be adopted before July 1st. And then, as usual, we end the season with our Auburn Enlarged School District Forum, which will be scheduled for May 2nd. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can send us your ideas for questions or thoughts for future guests to Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for KU Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow.